Thanks for joining us for today's Wellness Wednesday. I'm your host, Lori Gilbert, and today we're featuring Lori Nichols, who is a licensed social worker and happens to be our foster care licensing supervisor with Nevada Division of Child and Family Services. Lori, thank you for joining us. You have some very important information about what rural Nevadans in particular can do to help support families and our community.
Yeah, Lori, thank you for having me on. I am thrilled to be here. In today's times, it's just so important to keep this message going that we just have such a desperate need for good quality, nurturing, loving foster homes that we just have to keep pushing this information out to your listeners.
What are some of the reasons, Lori, that kids are in the system, as they say, that they come to DCFS for help?
Well, there can be a host different reasons why kids come into custody, and usually there's multiple reasons for that. It can 9 times out of 10, there's going to be a neglect factor, and that's usually due to some type of maybe mental health issue, substance use. Right now, people are really struggling, like keeping their housing and things like that. So it can be a multitude of reasons why people lose custody of their children. And we do everything we can to try to prevent that, just because we know that when kids come into custody, it's extremely stressful and traumatic for them.
We understand, Lori, in previous conversations that we have a dire need for rural foster homes, and some may wonder, why is it important to keep kids within their own communities?
In rural Nevada, every community is different, right? I mean, we have different family, generational, ties connected in those communities. And so it's so important for kids to be able to stay in those communities. And that's why we need foster homes in every single rural community, because we never know when kids are going to come into custody. And the last thing we want to do is have to move a child from one county, to another county, maybe 100 miles away. You might as well be placing that child on a whole different planet, because it ultimately will affect how quickly they're able to reunify. Visitation, it makes that all the more difficult to occur, because all those things that are so important for reunification purposes to get kids back home, it just makes it so much more difficult when our families are far away from their kids.
We're talking with Lori about the urgent need for rural foster caregivers. And so, Lori, what are the steps to becoming a foster caregiver? People can start asking questions and find out more without actually being committed to the process initially, right?
Yeah, and we have a great website. It is www.ruralnvfostercare.com. And that is where we suggest folks start the process. They can go on, peruse the website, find a lot of answers to maybe some of the questions that they have. And they can even start the licensing process through that. They would scroll all the way down on the first page, and there's basically a big button that says Get Started. And so that's pretty much how you begin the process. So right now our recruiter position is open. And so I don't have anybody in the position right now, but when you start through the website, then you go through, and then a licensing worker will be contacting you to get you set up for the orientation that's next. And that is virtual.
I was just going to say, Lori, so it is really convenient, something that you as an individual or a family can participate in, because these are monthly online orientations?
Yep, and they're going to be the first Thursday of every month from 6:30 to 8:30, and it's just a really great information session to ask questions and just to kind of get an idea of what our program is about. I think a lot of people tend to think that we're an adoption agency, and we're not. We want families to reunify. That's always going to be the goal. Adoption does happen in foster care, but 9 times out of 10, we want families that are going to be supportive of reunification. And so that's something that, we do talk about in the orientation.
So, Lori, there are some reasons people may be hesitant. There may be some misinformation that's gone around. What can you tell us about the myths of being a foster caregiver?
Well, I think, the first thing people think is, how difficult it's going to be to give to give the kids back when they do reunify. And that is really difficult. But if you didn't care and you weren't attached to these kids emotionally, then really we probably wouldn't want you being a foster care provider. So that is a huge piece of it. There is an emotional part of that. Some of the other things that people may think like, oh, the kids are going to be really difficult. And I'll be totally honest, kids that are coming into care, it's a different level of trauma, just due to all the things that are going on in the world right now. So that can be kind of a fear thing for people, like, oh, are these kids going to be too difficult? And so we do want your listeners to know that we would provide that support. We do have intensive family services within the state that come in and help support the placements. And for new foster families, we have the First Placement Program, which also has a mental health coach come in and work with the foster families about how to work with some of these behaviors that kids may come in with.
Well, thank you, Lori. It's important to know that any foster caregiver in our community or throughout the state gets that kind of support so that they can do their very best to give the care that these children need. And so, we understand that some people think, oh, there's this whole stereotype about a foster home and a big house and a married couple, but a lot of single people are actually choosing to foster. Isn't that right, Lori?
Absolutely. Yep. We have different types of foster families. We have single, we have married, we have families that are in partnerships. So, yeah, and every kid is going to be so different and have such different needs. For instance, some kids we wouldn't want to place in a home with a partner or a male relative or something to that effect. So if we have those single family homes, those are also very important. And people don't often think of that. They think, oh, you're looking for, married couple with 2 children or that are kind of flying the nest and so forth. And that's not the case. Every family that may be interested should reach out and find out, if this might be a good fit for them.
Thank you, Lori. Lori Nichols is a licensed social worker with Nevada Division of Child and Family Services. You can visit ruralnvfostercare.com. We are in desperate need of rural foster homes, Lori, and there is a lot of support. We haven't talked about the stipend, but there is training, there is support for expenses, as well as health care, right? If you wouldn't mind telling us about that.
Absolutely. So when kids do come into foster care, they're going to be covered by Medicaid. And so that's something important that people should know, is that any medical issues that come up are not going to be covered through the foster parent. The state will cover that. And then, of course, there is a foster care reimbursement payment every month. But we do also look at families, like we want to make sure that they have enough income coming in so that they can cover their own financial obligations without having to rely on a foster care reimbursement payment. And then, of course, we do have mental health services. We have intensive family services that come in. And our licensing unit across rural Nevada is extremely supportive of our families. And so we kind of act as a liaison between our foster families and the caseworkers, so that if there are issues or anything that is coming up, we do our best to try to level that ground and make sure that everybody's heard.
Lori, thank you. I think that you've given a lot of inspiration, cleared up a lot of questions, obviously, for listeners today. But again, these rural foster homes are desperately needed. If someone has been moved by our conversation today, but they're simply not in a position for whatever reason to actually host children, are there some other ways to help kids in rural Nevada if you can't actually foster at this time?
Yes, absolutely. So we do ask that, each of our offices in rural Nevada host some type of an angel tree program at Christmas time for our foster kids. We do reach out for, those gifts to be provided by the different communities. Sometimes, like in Elko, the Mines will help us with that. That's huge. We need people to spread the word that there's such a huge need for foster homes, that even if you're not meant to be a foster home, tell people that you think might be a good fit and give them our website address, because again, you never know in your circle who may be interested in wanting to know more about that. And so when you bring it up, if you have like groups, your churches, mommy's groups, things like that, please spread the word for us, because we are in a huge need for homes.
Lori Nichols, thank you so much. Lori is a licensed social worker and foster care licensing supervisor with Nevada Division of Child and Family Services, our Wellness Wednesday guest today, courtesy of the Vitality Integrated Program Services. Thank you again, Lori, and I hope that more people in our rural communities can step up to help. Visit ruralnvfostercare.com for all the details.